I'm Owen Bigland. This is the Inside Edge video blog. Okay, real estate in Vancouver really does go nothing but up. I'll say it again. You buy real estate in downtown Vancouver, east side, west side, detached home or condo, Richmond, Burnaby, buy it and it's guaranteed. You can give the Bigland stamp of approval that you're going to make moderate capital gains to, capital gains that would, blow you away in 20 or 30 or 40 years. So, contrary to what you'd see currently going on right now in the Vancouver market, in the media, or if you have a look at YouTube, the sky is falling, investors are getting crushed, market is plummeting, crash is here. Here's Bigland telling you that, hey, yeah, you buy real estate in Vancouver and you're going to make boatloads of capital gains on it. I have. So let me explain. I mean, as you guys know, there's very few realtors out there, I think, that have a YouTube channel like mine. I'm coming up to, I think, 15 years on this channel now, that have the 35 plus years in real estate, in Vancouver real estate, that I do. So if you guys have read my book, my whole story is here, along for the ride. It's my roadmap to how I became a multi-millionaire at a pretty young age, doing nothing fancy, just buying and holding Vancouver real estate and investing in the stock market. Fairly straightforward buy and hold strategy. Really, it's the only way to go. Speculating and flipping is, a good way to lose money. I've talked about, and I'm going to do more blogs on that butterfly unit building. I told you guys a few weeks ago that, yeah, the sellers in there are going to lose their shirts, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And maybe more if they can even sell them. There's yet to be a registered sale on MLS yet. So we haven't even gotten any price discovery. That's still going down. So here's Bigland saying, hey, you buy real estate in Vancouver and yeah, it does go nothing but up. And it does. So let me explain, guys. If you read my book, you have to understand how real estate, and for that matter, the stock market works. It would be wonderful if I bought 10 shares in Apple and it went nothing but up in perpetuity. But that's not the way the stock market works. It's not the way the real estate market works either. It would be lovely if I could buy a one-bedroom investment unit in Yaletown today and it went nothing but up for the next 20 years and I sell it at $1 million profit. But as Warren Buffett would say, and Peter Lynch, and all the world's greatest investors, in order to get the superior returns you get in both the stock market or the real estate markets, no matter what city that's in, you're going to have to put up with some volatility. That's the reward for these superior long-term returns. And that's the way Vancouver real estate is. It's not a rocket ride up. And there's a lot of people on YouTube, I'm going to get to at the end here. I call them, they're not very knowledgeable in real estate, most of these YouTube channels I see right now. They have, I think they're newbies. They definitely don't have a portfolio like that I have. They don't sell 40, 50 homes like I do, or are a top producer at their brokerage, own a large investment portfolio that they bought their first property 32 years ago and still own. They're newbies for the most part, but they're trying to be YouTube stars. And I keep telling you guys, you have to differentiate between the two. The guy that wants to be the YouTube star and the guy like me that tries to give you guys good, practical advice from experience. Been there, done that. So real estate doesn't go up in a straight line. There's going to be some ups and downs in there. And in order to get those superior long-term capital gain, you've got to be able to put up with some down markets. So as I speak right now, the last couple of years I've been blogging about, the market actually, guys, is pretty darn good. It's amazing how resilient this market has been coming out of COVID, considering all we've been to. The market skyrocketed out of COVID. Inflation got out of hand. We ratcheted up 12 interest rate hikes. Variable rate got up to about 6.5%. It more than tripled. I think it was up fourfold. The variable rate at one point was at 1.1%. The economy, the tariffs now that we've got going on, and yet the market has held up pretty well. I think the overall stat here the last couple of years, condo market in downtown Vancouver is down about 4 to 5%. But you have to realize they're lumping in a whole bunch of junk in there. Crappy old buildings that have got levees coming up, hugging up on bridges, busy streets. The high quality stuff, the stuff that I own downtown, has barely been scathed, and for the last year or so, it's kind of treading water. But let me just recap a couple of blogs that I've done, and I talk about it in my book here, of all the real estate I've owned. Well, first off, you have to follow my golden rules, what I've talked about many times on this blog and in my book on buying and holding real estate. Step number one is real estate does always go nothing but up, but you have to follow these rules. The biggest one is your holding period. So how many blogs have I done on my golden rules of real estate? When you buy a house, a detached house, townhouse, condo, studio, it doesn't matter what you're buying. My rule is a minimum 8 to 10 year holding period, but hopefully way longer than that. When I buy an investment property, and I own a large portfolio, as you guys know, both in Vancouver, downtown, east side, I also own a lot in Richmond, which is where I first started out 30 plus years ago. I'm buying that investment property and hanging on to it until the tenant pays off my mortgage. So 20, 22, 23 years. After that, I will re-examine it. Once you lose the leverage, of course, it diminishes the favorability of the investment once you lose that leverage on it, where you can deduct, the mortgage interest. But I'm hanging on to these, pretty much every purchase I've ever made, for a minimum of at least 10, 15 years, but hopefully a lot longer. It's an investment unit, I'm looking at it in 20-year horizons. So I can tell you guys that, I've owned a lot of properties, you guys know if you've read my book, and I still own a lot of properties. I have sold the odd one here and there. The odd investment unit is usually to consolidate, to buy something bigger or better. And then, of course, I have sold several principal residences over the years. I think 3 total. My last sale was about 7 years ago. I sold a large detached house out in Richmond. Fantastic home. I owned it for about 15 years. At a very large capital gain. So I can tell you guys, if anything that I've sold in my portfolio, I have made boatloads of capital gains on. Boatloads, especially on the detached stuff I've sold and a couple of townhomes I've sold. Same thing with all my investment units, the few that I have sold. Currently, if I look at my portfolio now many of the condos in my portfolio now I've had for 15, 20, 25 years. I've got boatloads of capital gains in these. Even my principal residence, which I only bought 6 years ago, I've turned a profit on it. I've got capital gains. But I talk about my book, and I've done a blog on this before. If I look at all the homes I've bought over the last 30 years, both as principal residence or as investment properties, half of them, it's a coin toss. Half of them have never gone underwater right from day one. In other words, I've bought them, and if I decided to sell it a year or two later, which I would never do because I'm not going to buy a home to flip it, because I've told you guys many times the friction costs here in BC are a scam. We've got PTT on the way in that they keep ratcheting up, perhaps GST if it's new, 2 sets of conveyancing costs, and then I get paid commissions. So friction costs are high. You buy a 1-bedroom condo, you need that thing to go up $50K just to break even on your friction costs. So for that reason, real estate isn't something you want to speculate on. Have to get in a position where you've got to sell it a year or 2 or 3 years later. And now, of course, we've got, with our socialist regime here, now they've added a new anti-flipping tax. So if you did manage to eke out a little bit of a return in the first couple of years, EB and the NDP are going to take it all from you. So real estate is a long-term commitment, 8 to 10 years or longer. But half of the properties I bought have been a gravy train with biscuit wheels. I bought it and it's never gone nothing but up. Even if I was to sell it in a year or 2 or 3 or 4, I'm making capital gains. The other half of the properties I've bought have been worth less than what I paid for them at some point. It's usually always in the first few years. 2, 3, 4 years. As I talk about in my book, the longest one I ever had was about 7 years. Where if I were to sell it after 7 years, probably would have lost a little bit of money, not much, 10K perhaps. But that's what you sign up for. And I'd like to think that here I am, 35 years experience. I had a father that was in real estate in his family for 40, 50 years. I would consider myself an expert on what I'm buying, negotiating for myself, and even I get it right half the time. So you got to remember that. Real estate goes up and down. Half of what I bought has been underwater for the first 3, 4, 5 years in some cases, where if I were forced to sell it, which I never would, after commissions and everything else, I would have lost some money. But that's what you sign up for with real estate. You know, I want to just harp again on, I've talked about this a lot lately, the cringeworthy stuff I'm seeing on YouTube. It gets worse and worse every month, guys. I see these recommended videos beside mine, and it's all doomsday stuff. You know, investors fleeing the Vancouver market, the crash is coming, you know, cap rates are plummeting and all this other stuff. Hey, I'm sorry, but guys, it's not true. It might be true with some of the stuff these people have bought. They've bought the wrong product. So that's rule number 2. The first one is your holding period. 8 to 10 year minimum will guarantee returns. And if the longer you hold it, the better those returns or those capital gains will be. Second thing is you got to know what you're buying. And oh boy, this is just a minefield. Some of the stuff that I see listed on the MLS right now, and people are buying it, is, I don't know what they're doing. They've obviously got a beer league buddy that's representing them. They're not reading the Stratox. They're definitely not reading the Stratox. They're not doing any due diligence on what they're buying. Locations are terrible. They're overpaying for these units, especially when you get into hot markets where most of the time in Vancouver here, we're in a seller's market 80% of the time. The other 10% of the time may be balanced. It's rare we ever get into a buyer's market, which is what makes this window right now one of the best I've seen in about 8 or 10 years. It's rare air right now we're in. Balanced. In some cases, it favors buyers on some of the product, the higher end stuff. But a lot of the high quality one beds downtown, usually I'm in bidding wars on these. And some of the times here now you can put an offer in below ask, which is rare. But that's the second thing, what you're buying, your holding period, what you're buying. You get the right realtor, you buy the right home, you buy something that you can comfortably afford, you bake in uncertainties there. If interest rates go up, leave yourself a buffer there. And you buy the right product. I mean, I see some of these guys, they're talking about, you know, studios, and they're getting their head handed to them because students aren't coming in. We've cut back the amount of students. And I have to wonder, my God, if your realtor got you in on buying a studio in some crappy strata and your main rental market is students, well, you get what you deserve there. That was a bad decision there. I would never get a client into something like that. I sell my clients into high quality strata. Some of them are older strata in the West End that have unit assembly potential 10, 15 years down the road, where a developer will just buy the whole thing out and give you twice your assessed value. That's kind of the white knight strategy. But you know, these are going to be rented unfurnished, one beds, which will be suitable for a single guy or gal, or maybe a couple. If you based your investment strategy off investing or renting to students, that was flawed right from the beginning. The other thing I find, I get the odd student that applies for some of my one beds when they come up, but I can't run a credit check on these guys. They have no credit history in Canada, so you're out of your mind to be even renting to them. But that's kind of these horror stories you see. If you dig a little deeper, they're in a bad strata. Their whole demographic that they were renting to was flawed right to the beginning. They were trying to rent to students, or they were trying to rent them furnished and everything else. So you hire a good realtor, you buy the right product, you don't overpay for it, you negotiate a price, and then of course you hang on to the damn thing. Every investor client that I work with, and I've got hundreds of them, you know, that's what we're coming in as. That's why they're hiring me. We're going to buy the right unit in the right strata, in the right location, at the right price. We're going to leave a little bit of a buffer for interest rate hikes. Maybe you lose a month's rent if it's a down market when you have to place a new tenant. And you're going to hang on to the damn thing, because by keeping it, we are guaranteeing capital gain on it. And we'll reevaluate it in 15 or 20 years when that mortgage is pretty much paid off and you've lost the leverage. Perhaps then might be the time to sell it. Although I've told you guys, I've got several properties now that I own clear title, no mortgage on them, and they're just a gravy train of revenue. All my stuff is rented. I haven't placed a new tenant now in almost a year. My last one was in Olympic Village. Things are good for me, guys, as a landlord. But if you dig a little deeper on these YouTube channels and these guys exiting the business as landlords, well, there's a reason for it. What they own is probably not that good. I know it's not. The demographic of tenants they're shooting for is poor, and everything else. So don't buy into it. But real estate goes up. You just have to have the right holding period, buy the right product, negotiate the right deal. It all comes down, guys, to your realtor and who you're getting advice from. And I've done lots of blogs on this. Experience matters in this. The final thing I'll leave you with, again, be very careful with the advice you're getting on TikTok, on Twitter, and especially on YouTube, because I don't go on any of those other channels. But I see these recommended videos and I just cringe at some of the stuff I'm seeing. Market actually isn't that bad right now. For the good quality stuff, it's selling quick. For good quality one beds, I just got into another bidding war a couple weeks ago on a good one bed. Me and one other offer. And so now is a pretty darn good window to buy. Now, if you're pre-approved, a lot of these people that complain about the market, of course, they're not in a position to buy anyways. They're just full-time haters, as I've talked about many times. They don't have the 100K or the 150K down as a down payment. They don't have the income to qualify. They haven't even talked to a bank to try and get a mortgage. They've kind of given up hope, and instead of just moving on with their life, I think a lot of these guys just kind of spend hours on YouTube and on chat boards criticizing the market and everything's wrong and everything's doomed and we're all going to die. Tune all that stuff out. I'm going to do some more Saturday blogs on this summer, getting your attitude right and the mindset you have to have, because it's one of the better markets I've seen, guys, if you're a buyer. As a matter of fact, I'm in the market. I'm getting ready to pull the trigger on another one bed in downtown Vancouver here pretty soon. I'm just waiting for the right unit here to hit. But call me old-fashioned, I like to buy when the market's balanced or maybe even favoring me a little bit, where I can write an offer. I'm not in competition with 8 other parties. I can negotiate the price, write in a home inspection and everything else, and my interest rates are quite favorable. I don't really like to buy when markets are white hot. The units get listed, they do holdbacks for a week, and then look at offers, and it's you and 8 other parties. And now, instead of being able to get that home for 10K under asking price, now I have to write 20 or 30K over asking price. And that's when the market starts to hit up, and it goes quick, guys. You'll see. I've seen this movie many, many times before, unlike a lot of these YouTube guys. That's the first thing that happens. Interest rates come down a bit more. All of a sudden on the good stuff, you get 2 or 3 offers on them and you're having to bid. And then all of a sudden you get a 20, 30K jump on a home. Final thing, listen, I know a lot of you will think, well, I'm getting paid to wait, and that's fine. I'm not telling you to move on anything. If you think you're getting paid to wait and you're all pre-approved, you're qualified, you got your down payment, wait for the right unit, no problem. But pretty decent window right now to buy. I am, and it's funny, all my buyers right now for the last year or so, for investors, they're not first-time investors. They're all pretty savvy, experienced guys that I've done work with many, many times over the years. They're my buyers right now because they know. They're experienced. Hey, I'd rather buy now, get Owen to write an offer, we'll grind down a price. A year from now, could be back into bidding wars where I'm paying over asking, and most of my experienced investors, including myself, don't like to buy in those type of markets. But it's funny, most people from Vancouver do like to buy in those markets. It's that old saying, you buy high, sell low. That's what these guys do instead of buy low, sell high. But it's just human nature. Everyone thinks they're getting paid to wait. Market's trending lower. I'll just wait another 6 months. Right now on the good quality one beds, prices really aren't coming down. They're treading water right now. Now, could you buy that home and a year later it's worth 10K less for that one bed? Sure. But is it going to make a big difference if you're buying it as your principal residence and following my 8 to 10 year minimum holding period? It's not going to make any difference. It's going to be a cup of coffee. So, market is what it is. Real estate does go nothing but up if you have the proper holding period, which is what you need with real estate. Real estate is something you get in and get out of. And again, pulling the trigger now, as a lot of savvy buyers are doing, is probably a pretty good deal. It'll probably look pretty good in 5 or 10 years from now, even maybe a couple years from now, because it's always that same thing. People look back on the market and they say, I can't believe they're looking to bid on one that's currently listed at 700K. And they look back 2 years ago, which was today, and they say, I can't believe these were selling at 650. Where was I? Huh? You were listening to these YouTube stars that are telling you that the sky is falling and everything's doom and gloom when it's not. So be careful out there, guys. Make sure you're getting good counsel on this stuff. Hire a pro, hire a realtor that's been around for a while, does lots of business, owns a lot of real estate, has skin in the game like I do. There's not a lot of us out there. So those are the ones you should be taking your counsel from. I'm Owen Bigland. As always, thanks for watching. See you next week.